Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. First of all, I just want to wish you all a really happy new year. I don't want to dwell on things too much, but let's just hope that 2021 is a little bit better for everybody. We are here today to talk about my favourite books of 2020. Obviously I had a lot more time to myself this year, which meant I read quite a few more books than usual. My goal has always been to read about 50 books every year, but this year I think I read 48, 49, so I was so close. I have said this before in quite a few videos, but 2020 has just been an excellent reading year for me. I feel really blessed with the books that I've been sent by publishers, and also the books that I just happen to have picked up myself have just been exactly what I needed at the time. So it's made this decision super difficult. I haven't done a top 10, I've just gone through the pictures of every book that I've read and just instinctively picked the ones out that I feel like they were my absolute favourites. And I do have a few honourable mentions that I'm going to get to at the end. Yeah, we'll do those at the end. But I do just want to say thank you to all the publishers that have been so kind enough to be still sending books out during this horrendous year, so thank you so much. Let's get into it. I'm so excited! If you look back across all the books that you've read during a year and one of the first books that you read during that year still sticks out to you to be a favourite, then you know that it's a keeper and it's definitely one you should be mentioning. So this is The Five, The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper by Hallie Rubenhold. I read this, I think, maybe the second or third book that I read this year, and it has just stuck with me throughout the entire year. I recommended this to so many people during this year. It is by far my favourite non-fiction that I read this year. I'm sure you've heard a lot of people talk about this book, and I'm sure you know all about it, but what I love about this book so much is that it doesn't focus on Jack the Ripper. Yes, it's a book about their killings, but it is solely focused on the women's lives, and we get to really invest ourselves into each woman's story. We don't see them as victims, we see them as women, as mothers, as wives, living in these horrendous conditions in Victorian Britain. And I'm just astounded at the research and the depth and the dedication, but also how accessible this book is. If you are at all interested in history or Victorian Britain, Victorian life, women throughout history, or even the story of Jack the Ripper, then I couldn't recommend this anymore. And if you have been considering picking this up, this is your sign to definitely pick it up. Next on the list is this absolute beauty. This is Sheila Heti's Motherhood. I believe I first saw this on Lena's channel, which I will leave a link to down below. I have a very difficult relationship when it comes to motherhood. I'm pretty sure at the time when I reviewed this book I mentioned I have no interest at the moment in having children. It's never been something that I've been particularly drawn to. I don't feel like I have that kind of maternal instinct. The narrator in this is constantly mulling over the benefits and the beauty and the luxury of having children, but also the reality of whether or not that is something that you want to do and something that you want in your body. It's important to note that this isn't about children. It's not about that. It's about the impact of being a mother and the ways in which that can impact your body and your life in so many different ways. What it means in society to be a mother or to have children or not to want children, and how people perceive you. It's complex and it's very emotionally weighted, which is something that I particularly really enjoy. But if any of those kind of topics sound interesting to you, then I would absolutely recommend this. I think it's just stunning. Okay, so the next one, I mean, catch me reading a book about a virus in February, March, just before we went into full lockdown. So this is Tender is the Flesh, which is by Agustina Bazterrica, and it was translated from the Spanish by Sarah Moses. This was published by Pushkin Press earlier this year, and I was very kindly sent a proof copy of it, and oh my god, I love this book so much. It is horrific. It is so gory and disturbing, and everybody that I know that has read it off the back of me recommending it to them has said exactly the same, that you love it for the macabre nature of it. So essentially what's happened in this is it's a part dystopian book in which a virus has infected animals, which means we can no longer use them for meat. So society moves on to use humans for meat. You think of it as the same as now with like the slaughterhouses and how animals are kept to be used for their meat. Just take out the animals and insert humans, and you've got the concept of this book. We follow the character of Marcos, who is a worker at one of these slaughterhouses, and he is gifted a piece of like prime meet, which is this woman, and what unfolds from that is just horrendous. There are some really intense descriptions of the slaughterhouses and how this meat is produced and how they've conditioned the humans to be susceptible to be able to take their meat is incredibly disturbing. So I will just say, if you're not one for gore and being disturbed, maybe this isn't for you, but if you are, it is definitely for you. It also gives you a great insight into whether or not you want to continue eating meat after reading this. Oh my god, it put me off meat. Yeah, I've never read anything like this. I will say as well, very quickly, it was also excellently written, and it is something that I found myself just sitting down and wanting to read from start to finish all in one go. It was gripping as well as it was disturbing, so yeah, absolutely. Such a good book. So we're now going to move on to talk a little bit about Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. Yes, I love this book, and I recently won a competition with Lit.br, so I now have the gold version and they take pride of place on my shelf. I love them. But this is one that I read this year. Again, I'm sure this is one that a lot of you have read, and if you haven't read it yet and you're thinking about picking it up, I'm telling you now is your chance. It did take me a long time to pick this up, but I'm so glad that I did. What I love so much about this book, and I think I mentioned this in my review at the time, is that it doesn't shy away from the realities of Queenie's life and so many women living in Britain. I adored her sarcasm and her wit and her honesty when it came to racism and sexism. I felt that all of the kind of like side characters were really well rounded, and I loved hearing the different voices from her friends, and I feel like it really taught me so much about what it's like to be a black woman living in the UK. It absolutely deserves all of the hype and more that it receives, and yeah, I genuinely couldn't recommend it anymore. Such a good book and super accessible. I loved it. I really loved it. So the next one I feel like you're going to see on everybody's best books of 2020, and oh my god, it so deserves it. Absolutely. Evie Waz, The Base Rock. Oh my god, this book blew me away. So this book is 3 women's narratives, the first being in the 1700s, the second is post World War II, and the third is present day, all set around this house in Scotland by the Base Rock. This is every part a piece of absolutely gorgeous gothic writing, as it is an excellent account of women's struggles throughout the last few hundred years. It really goes in depth to show how women were perceived in society and ultimately how they were so wrongly treated, and I just felt so immeasurably sorry for the characters in these narratives. It has tragedy, it has death, it has feminism, all set in this beautiful house. Like, what more could you ask for? I actually picked this up from the Feminist Bookshop in Brighton. I'll leave a link to them down below. They're a gorgeous little independent bookstore, but yeah, absolutely fantastic. Such a good book. I also picked this book up while I was in Brighton, interestingly enough. So this is Exit Management by Naomi Booth, which is published by Dead Ink. I did talk about this relatively recently, so I don't want to go on too much, but this book, you just have no idea what you're letting yourself in for when you start to read this book. It centres around 2 characters, Callum and Lauren. Lauren works in HR and Callum looks after these beautiful houses for like the rich and famous for people to come and stay in, and there is an old man called Joseph who owns one of the houses. He's getting very poorly with MS, and Callum decides to be his full-time carer. Callum and Lauren begin this tumultuous relationship, and she kind of wants Joseph out the way, and we go from there. I mentioned in my review that there is a scene in particular towards the end which is incredibly disturbing, but I feel like is very crucial to the story. I don't think I actually mentioned this in the review, but like I said, Joseph has MS and there is a little bit of a conversation surrounding that. Also not something that I see represented in many books, and my dad has MS, so I deal with that with him firsthand. So I appreciated the fact that it was mentioned so brutally honestly within this, which made it even more heartbreaking for me. But yeah, equal parts disturbing, darkly comic at times. I don't want to tell you too much about it. I genuinely think if that sounds like something you're interested in, I know that you'll like it, but it is absolutely sublime and it blew me away, and I feel like more people need to be talking about this book because it is so good. So before I get on to my honourable mentions, I'm going to talk about Boy Parts last, by Eliza Clark. This is published by Influx Press, and I was recommended this by a friend who had seen it and said, you like kind of disturbing books, I think you'll like this. They were so right. So this is about a character called Irina, who is a photographer, and she likes to take generally quite explicit photos of men. So she goes around the streets of Newcastle scouting men and asks them to pose in kind of various explicit ways. After being placed on a sabbatical from her job, she's given the opportunity to show some of her photos in a London art gallery, and although this may be incredible news for her, this kind of sends her headfirst into a really dark and disturbing place, and the narrative kind of picks up from there. I have said this on my channel so many times, but I like characters that are awful. I really enjoy horrible, horrible characters. So Irina's character, I just loved. This book explores very modern society for younger people in regards to taboo subjects, difficult subjects, but also sexuality, identity, gender, and I really appreciate that. It's very funny in places, it's very disturbing in places. If you just want to read a story about an awful character, knowing that you'll be disturbed and you'll laugh out loud, then I absolutely would recommend this. It is so good. The light is depleting very quick, so I'm going to get through these last 4 honourable mentions for you. So the first is Nikki French's House of Correction, although I would say within this it's just Nikki French in general. The Lying Room was the first book that I read in 2020 and I loved it, and this is but it came out in September. Yeah, so it came out September, just gone. This is published by Simon & Schuster, and I was very lucky enough to receive a proof of this. So it's not necessarily this book, it's just in general, I just absolutely adore their work. If you like expertly written crime that is just packed full of so many twists that you just don't see coming and you can't guess the ending, I would absolutely recommend. I'd say start with The Lying Room and then work onto House of Correction, but both of them are absolutely fantastic. So next we have The Harpy by Megan Hunter. This was very kindly sent to me from Picador. I read this not too long ago, but it has really stuck with me. This book takes a very simple idea of a relationship breaking apart because somebody is cheating and twists it on its head with these accompanying passages about Lucy's obsession with the mythical creature of a harpy and how the two coincide, and you read them as kind of separate entities. We get the accounts of the cheating and the marriage falling apart, and then we get the harpies, and then by the end it is just kind of symbiotic and the two become one, and it just creates this beautiful poetic narrative that I enjoyed so much. Okay, so this is The Other Passenger by Louise Candlish. This is also published by Simon & Schuster. This is the proof copy again. I was very kindly sent one, thank you so much. And this was out earlier last year. So the reason that I've included this is because this is the book that I have consistently recommended to people so much throughout the year. If they ever ask me for a plot twist book or a crime thriller or one of those books where you read and you physically cannot put it down because you have to know the ending, this is always the book that I go to. So this book focuses around the character of Jamie, who gets the river bus to work every morning in London, and he sits beside his friend Kit, and then one day Kit doesn't turn up on the bus, and when Jamie gets off, police are there to investigate him because they believe that he is responsible for Kit being missing. You kind of feel like you know where it's going, and then about a third of the way in it does a 180 and it flips on you, and you just kind of like fall into this rabbit hole, and oh my god, I loved it. If you like crime thrillers, if you like plot twist after plot twist that keep you guessing and are really well written, then I would absolutely recommend this. It's such a good read. And finally, would this be a best books of 2020 if I didn't include a short story collection? I don't think so. So it has to be Famished by Anna Vaught. This is published by Influx and it came out in September. I did read this quite early on in the year, and this is a proof copy. Absolutely gorgeous cover. It is a collection of just some really gruesome and disturbing and magical realism inspired short stories. I think in my original review I mentioned a couple of writers that I feel like if you liked their work then you'll really like this, and if you like this you'll like their work, so I've got those to show for you now. So Children of the New World by Alexander Weinstein is an amazing short story collection which has a similar kind of vibe. It's definitely not as disturbing, but it has that kind of whimsy that I really enjoyed in Famished. However, if you like your disturbing short stories, these two, Vampires in the Lemon Grove by Karen Russell, any of Karen Russell's work, absolutely, and A Guide to Being Born by Ramona Ushabel, which I read years ago, probably like 3 or 4 years ago. If you like either of these, then you'll absolutely love this, and if you really enjoyed this, then I would absolutely recommend you go and read these. Cool. But yeah, sublime short story collection. Cannot wait to see what Anna does next. Super excited. And that's it, we made it, we got there, we made it through 2020 and we read some great books. Please let me know down below if you've read any of the books that I've just mentioned and which ones you're most excited about picking up. And I never usually say this, but I feel like I should say it, it's 2021. If you do want to subscribe, please feel free to do that. I am going to be posting videos a lot more regularly this year. It's so lovely to be back on YouTube and I'm super excited for where this year will take me. And until then, my next video, I will see you soon. Stay safe. Bye.